So this is what got interesting. Alt 5 Sigma, back about a month or so ago, informed the SEC that it could not file its quarterly report on time for a variety of reasons that had been laid out in a previous filing, and also that there had been delays associated with its accountant. So I was writing an article on the fact that they could not file this quarterly report on time. This was before Thanksgiving. So in the course of my reporting, I reached out to the accountant and said, "Hey, Alt 5 Sigma says there's a delay with your report. What's going on here?" And the accountant said something I was not expecting, which was, "I stopped working for them in August." That really struck out because they were the last accountant on record for any of their filings. I then reached back out to Alt 5 Sigma saying like, "Hey, I sent you all these questions about what delays your accountant might be responsible for. Let's step that back a little bit."
You just watched it unfold right there in that clip. And if your blood isn't boiling yet, then you haven't been paying attention, because this is not some arcane procedural dispute about accounting minutia. This is the anatomy of deception at the highest levels of power, and you're about to understand exactly how deeply the rot goes when Donald Trump touches anything in the financial universe. Because Alt 5 Sigma faces SEC scrutiny as auditor resignation gaps and CEO suspension delays raise major compliance and governance concerns, with the U.S. SEC investigating the company for possible violations related to financial reporting and leadership disclosure. And this company just happens to be tied to a billion-dollar deal with Trump's World Liberty financial cryptocurrency venture. So let me walk you through what you just witnessed, because every single detail matters, and I promise you this gets worse with each passing revelation. The reporter explained it with crystalline clarity, and the sheer audacity should take your breath away. The company told the SEC that Auditor William Hudgens resigned on November 24th, but Hudgens says he informed Alt 5 months earlier, before June 30, that he planned to stop auditing public companies after the second quarter filing. Do you understand what that means? SEC rules require companies to report an auditor's resignation within 4 business days, which means we're looking at a months-long violation of federal securities law, a discrepancy so brazen that experts say this could be a serious breach of federal reporting rules, and yet Alt 5 Sigma thought they could just slide this past regulators with a convenient Black Friday filing, hoping everyone was too stuffed with turkey and consumerist distraction to notice that their story didn't match reality. But wait, because it gets so much more delicious in its depravity, Alt 5 Sigma has not yet filed its Q3 report, and previously blamed delays on its accountant, but when asked about who the accountant was at the time, the company refused to comment. Think about that construction of lies for just one moment, because they told the SEC they couldn't file on time because of accountant delays, but when a journalist did the most basic due diligence and called the accountant, he said he stopped working for them in August, and when confronted with this contradiction, the company suddenly developed selective amnesia about who was even doing their accounting work. This is not sophisticated financial engineering. This is a child with chocolate on their face insisting they didn't eat the cookies, except the stakes here involve federal securities regulations and a company that had previously agreed to raise $1.5 billion for a treasury of WLFI tokens under its deal with World Liberty Financial. And here's where we need to zoom out and see the constellation of corruption, because this isn't happening in isolation. This is part of a systematic pattern of Trump-adjacent grift that has characterized every single business venture this family has touched. And I want you to understand the scope of what we're witnessing in real time, because President Trump and his family have earned hundreds of millions of dollars and added billions to their net worth through a network of cryptocurrency ventures launched during and after the 2024 campaign, including World Liberty Financial and the Trump meme coin, and Trump has crypto holdings worth as much as $11.6 billion and income of more than $800 million from the sale of crypto assets in the first half of 2025 alone, while simultaneously systematically dismantling anti-corruption and financial integrity safeguards, including dissolving the Department of Justice's National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. Let me connect these dots with the precision they deserve, because the Alt 5 Sigma scandal is not some random corporate malfeasance that accidentally intersected with Trump world. It is emblematic of the entire ecosystem of regulatory evasion and financial manipulation that has defined how this administration approaches cryptocurrency. And you need to understand the timeline here, because since Trump took office in January, his family's wealth has increased by potentially billions of dollars through crypto ventures such as World Liberty Financial, and the Trumps have likely made more than $1 billion off crypto just in the year that Donald Trump's been in office. Which means that every single regulatory decision, every enforcement action dropped, every investigation quietly shelved, represents a direct financial benefit to the sitting president and his family. Now let's talk about what's really happening with Alt 5 Sigma, beyond just the auditor lie, because Alt 5 Sigma may also have mishandled reporting CEO Peter Tasiopoulos' suspension, with official filings stating he was placed on leave on October 16, but an internal memo dated September 4 shows he had been suspended much earlier, and federal rules require companies to report executive departures including suspensions within 4 business days, so missing this deadline adds another potential violation and raises concerns about governance. Multiple federal violations, a pattern of deception in SEC filings, contradictory statements to regulators, and all of this is swirling around a company that was supposed to funnel $1.5 billion into Trump's crypto venture, and you have to ask yourself, what kind of due diligence was performed here? Or more accurately, whether any due diligence was performed at all, or whether the Trump name alone was sufficient to grease the wheels of this partnership. But here's what should make your hair stand on end, because it's not just about one shady company with bad accounting practices. The Trump family's crypto ventures have attracted substantial investments from foreign nationals and state-linked entities seeking to curry favor with the administration, and foreign actors and corporate interests have been buying access and favors from the president by funneling money into the Trump family's cryptocurrency ventures. And in return, these financial backers have received swift returns including regulatory rollbacks, policy giveaways, and the quiet termination of federal investigations into major players in the crypto industry. This is the quid pro quo laid bare. This is corruption not as some abstract constitutional violation, but as a concrete exchange of cash for policy outcomes, and the scale is staggering because the firm associated with the Abu Dhabi government purchased $2 billion worth of tokens from World Liberty in 2025, and shortly thereafter the Trump administration approved a plan to give the UAE firm hundreds of thousands of advanced scarce computer chips despite national security concerns. $2 billion flows into Trump's crypto operation, and suddenly export controls on advanced semiconductor technology evaporate despite warnings from national security experts. And if you don't think that represents a fundamental betrayal of the public trust, then I don't know what definition of corruption you're working with. In 2025, President Trump pardoned Changpeng Zhao, who had been convicted of anti-money laundering compliance failures after his company Binance had helped enrich World Liberty Financials, which means the pardon power enshrined in the Constitution as a check on judicial overreach has been transformed into a mechanism for rewarding financial benefactors. Trump pardoned Zhao, the billionaire founder of Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange, after the company admitted to evading U.S. sanction laws and Zhao pleaded guilty to violating anti-money laundering laws. Let me take you even deeper into the architecture of this grift because senators cited a report from Accountable.us, which said World Liberty Financial had sold its WLFI tokens to various highly suspicious entities including traders with ties on the blockchain, to a notorious North Korean hacking organization, a sanctioned Russian ruble-backed sanctions evasion tool, an Iranian crypto exchange, and Tornado Cash, a known money laundering platform. North Korean hackers, Russian sanctions evaders, Iranian entities, money laundering platforms. This reads like a greatest hits compilation of international bad actors, and they're all funneling money into a cryptocurrency venture that enriches the sitting president of the United States. And Senators Warren and Reid raised concerns that World Liberty Financial may pose national security risks, arguing that the firm lacks adequate safeguards to prevent bad actors from moving funds or gaining influence over its governance. National security risks from a presidential family business venture. And where is the outrage? Where are the congressional hearings? Where is the media saturation that would accompany literally any other president engaging in even a fraction of this behavior? The normalization of Trumpian corruption has been so complete and so devastating that we can have a Forbes reporter on camera explaining that a company lied to the SEC about its accountant in connection with $1 billion Trump crypto deal, and it barely registers as a scandal because we're drowning in scandals, because the fire hose of corruption has been so relentless that our capacity for moral outrage has been systematically desensitized. Now let's talk about regulatory capture, because that's ultimately what we're witnessing here, the complete subordination of government oversight to private financial interests, the transition from the Biden administration's enforcement-heavy approach under Chair Gary Gensler to the Trump administration's innovation-driven strategy under Chair Paul Atkins, marks a significant shift in priorities, which is bureaucratic language for the fact that between April 2021 and December 2024, the SEC initiated 125 cryptocurrency-related enforcement actions, resolving 98 with $6.5 billion in penalties, nearly 4 times the amount under the prior administration. But now that Trump is back in office, those enforcement actions are being systematically dismantled. Many listed enforcement actions and investigations have been withdrawn under the SEC's new leadership and policy stance, which means that companies that violated securities laws are getting a free pass because the president has a financial interest in ensuring the crypto industry remains unregulated and profitable for his family's ventures. In February 2025, shortly after Trump took office as president for the second time, the Securities and Exchange Commission was reported to be backing off an investigation that it was conducting into Justin Sun's companies, and the financial relationship between Trump and Sun raised potential conflicts of interest at that time. And remember that Justin Sun, the Chinese-born entrepreneur and billionaire, has spent at least $75 million on WLFI and serves as an advisor to World Liberty Financial. $75 million buys you an SEC investigation that mysteriously evaporates. It buys you an advisor role in a presidential family business. It buys you a seat at the table where American policy is formulated. And this is not hyperbole. This is not conspiracy theory. This is documented fact reported by mainstream financial journalists and confirmed through SEC filings and congressional investigations. The House Democrats released a comprehensive report showing extensive evidence of presidential self-dealing, foreign influence, and obstruction of justice, revealing how the Trump administration's crypto policies were designed to advance Trump and his family's personal financial interests at the expense of the law, ethics, and national security. And here's what makes the Alt-5 Sigma story so perfect as a microcosm of the broader corruption, because it demonstrates that the Trump crypto ecosystem doesn't just attract ethically challenged operators, it requires them, because when you're building a financial empire on the foundation of presidential power and regulatory capture, you need partners who are willing to lie to the SEC. You need companies that will fabricate stories about accountants and file misleading disclosures and hope that nobody bothers to fact-check their claims. And for the most part they're right, because Alt-5 Sigma, a new investment partner of the Trump family's World Liberty Financial, denied a report suggesting one of its executives was being probed by the SEC and stated it was unaware of any current investigation into its activities by the securities regulator. So they just deny and obfuscate and hope the news cycle moves on. But let's talk about who's actually involved here, because in 2021, the SEC filed a civil complaint against John Isaac and his companies Live Ventures and Jan 1, accusing them of financial and disclosure fraud with allegations including inflating earnings, backdating contracts, and concealing stock sales through a nominee account. And this John Isaac has connections to Alt-5 Sigma, and Zach Witkoff, the son of the U.S. President's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and another World Liberty Financial co-founder, was listed as chairman of the Alt-5 Sigma board. So we have the son of a presidential envoy chairing the board of a company that's under SEC scrutiny for false filings while simultaneously partnering with the Trump family crypto venture. The nepotism and conflicts of interest are so densely layered that you need a flowchart to track all the connections. And according to an SEC filing, Alt-5 Sigma designated Eric Trump and World Liberty Financial co-founder Zach Folkman as board observers rather than members. So Eric Trump was supposed to have a formal role, but they scaled it back, probably because even they recognized how brazenly corrupt it looked to have the president's son on the board of a company that was under investigation for securities violations. Now I want you to think about the institutional rot this represents, because the Securities and Exchange Commission was created in the wake of the 1929 stock market crash, specifically to protect investors from fraud and market manipulation. It was born from the understanding that unregulated financial markets inevitably devolve into casinos where insiders fleece ordinary Americans. And for decades, the SEC served as a critical bulwark against exactly the kind of behavior we're seeing from Alt-5 Sigma. Trump's Justice Department even scrapped the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, giving a green light to all kinds of crypto crime, even though Americans lost $9.3 billion in crypto scams in 2024. $9.3 billion stolen from American investors, and the response from this administration is to disband the enforcement team that was investigating those crimes. And you know why? Because Trump's World Liberty Financial makes and sells stablecoins, and the crypto industry lobbied for legislation that gives a stamp of legitimacy to so-called stablecoins. So every enforcement action against crypto fraud, every investigation into market manipulation, every attempt to impose disclosure requirements on token issuers represents a threat to the Trump family's bottom line, which means the regulatory apparatus of the federal government has been repurposed from protecting American investors to protecting Trump's financial interests. This is not capitalism. This is not free markets. This is not innovation. This is kleptocracy. This is the use of state power to facilitate private enrichment, and it follows a pattern that we've seen throughout Trump's business career, because this is a man who received documented spending of $5,572 at Trump-owned properties during his time in office by the government of the People's Republic of China and companies owned or substantially controlled by the PRC, and the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China paid Trump Tower at least $5,357.495 between February 2017 and October 2019, while President Trump refused to impose sanctions on Chinese banks including ICBC, despite evidence they facilitated financial transactions to benefit the North Korean regime. $5.5 million from Chinese entities flows into Trump properties, and suddenly he's going soft on sanctions enforcement, and we're supposed to believe these are unrelated events. We're supposed to accept that there's no connection between the money flowing into Trump's pocket and the policy decisions flowing out of the Oval Office, and this is where the mainstream media's both sidesism and preference for procedural coverage over substantive analysis fails us catastrophically, because they'll report the facts in isolation, but they refuse to connect the dots and call it what it is: corruption, bribery, the selling of American foreign policy to the highest bidder. And now we have Alt 5 Sigma caught red-handed lying to federal regulators about basic facts like when their auditor stopped working for them. UCLA law professor James Park observes that the company fails to file its 10Q in time, which aggravates the situation, and rather than face any consequences, they just continue operating and pursuing this massive deal with World Liberty Financial, because accountability is for other people, because when you're operating in Trump world, the normal rules simply don't apply. Let me take you back to first principles for a moment, because we need to understand what's at stake here beyond just one corrupt deal or one lying company, and I'm talking about the basic social contract that makes democratic capitalism possible. The system only works if there are rules that apply to everyone, if there are referees with teeth who can punish bad actors, if there are disclosure requirements that give investors the information they need to make informed decisions, if there are consequences for lying to regulators. Every single one of those premises is being systematically destroyed by an administration that views financial regulation as an obstacle to personal enrichment, rather than a safeguard for market integrity. As we saw during the 2008 financial meltdown, the more the economy becomes entwined with volatile and speculative investments like crypto, the greater the risk to all of us. The failure of risky bets can have a domino effect. If a single cryptocurrency began to tank, investors would likely rush to sell off crypto to get their real money back, which could lead to massive bank runs, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has predicted that under crypto legislation, firms could end up holding more than $2 trillion in U.S. Treasury bills as collateral, and if they had to suddenly liquidate those assets to cover a bank run, the value of U.S. securities could plummet, triggering a global financial crisis. $2 trillion in Treasury bills held as collateral for crypto schemes that could evaporate overnight, and we're speeding toward this cliff because the president and his family are making billions of dollars, and they've captured the regulatory agencies that are supposed to prevent exactly this kind of systemic risk. And when it all comes crashing down, when the music stops and the crypto bubble pops, and ordinary Americans lose their retirement savings, Trump will be safely insulated by his billions while everyone else suffers the consequences. This is predatory capitalism at its most vicious. This is the looting of the public sphere for private gain. This is what happens when you elect someone who views the presidency not as a public trust, but as a business opportunity, and the Alt 5 Sigma scandal crystallizes all of this, because it shows you don't even need to be competent at corruption anymore. You can tell obvious lies to federal regulators, you can refuse to file required disclosures, you can fabricate excuses about accountants who stopped working for you months ago, and as long as you're partnered with Trump you'll face no consequences, because the enforcement mechanism has been dismantled from the inside. Representative Jamie Raskin released a staff report revealing how Trump and his family have transformed the presidency into a personal money-making operation, adding billions of dollars to his net worth through cryptocurrency schemes entangled with foreign governments, corporate allies, and criminal funtards, noting that Trump has turned the Oval Office into the world's most corrupt crypto startup operation, minting staggering personal fortunes in less than a year, while pardoning criminals who commit fraud through crypto and dismantling the regulations that protect legitimate American investors, and stating we don't know where all the money is coming from yet, but America has never seen corruption on this scale take place inside the White House. Never seen corruption on this scale, and Raskin is a constitutional scholar. He studied the founding era. He knows about Teapot Dome and Watergate, and all the other scandals that have plagued American politics, and he's telling you this is unprecedented, this is off the charts, this is a qualitatively different kind of corruption, because it's so brazen, so shameless, so comprehensively intertwined with government policy, that it represents a fundamental break from everything that came before, And you know what the most maddening part is? The administration disbanded DOJ's crypto unit after business talks between Binance and a Trump-backed crypto company ramped up and halted SEC enforcement actions against crypto companies that enriched Trump wool. So they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're openly dismantling enforcement capabilities against the very companies that are making them rich. And Trump fired 18 inspectors general who make sure federal agencies follow the law, fired the head of the Office of Special Counsel who protects whistleblowers, and fired the head of the Office of Government Ethics, who watches to ensure the president and administration follow laws on conflicts of interest, bribery, and other ethics issues. Every watchdog eliminated, every oversight mechanism neutered, every potential source of accountability purged, and this isn't happening by accident. This is a systematic campaign to create an environment where Trump and his associates can operate with impunity, where companies like Alt-5 Sigma can lie to regulators without fear of consequences, where billion-dollar deals with foreign governments can proceed without scrutiny, where the entire apparatus of federal law enforcement has been repurposed from serving justice to serving Trump's financial interests. The Forbes reporter in that clip did exactly what journalism is supposed to do. He picked up the phone, he called the accountant, he asked basic questions, he caught the company in a lie, he confronted them with the contradiction, and now we have documentary evidence of federal securities violations. But in a functioning democracy that would trigger an SEC investigation, there would be subpoenas, there would be forensic accountants going through Alt-5 Sigma's books, there would be congressional hearings, and yet I would bet everything I own that none of that happens because the fix is in, because the regulatory agencies answer to Trump, because the congressional Republicans have made it clear they will provide no oversight whatsoever of an administration that's making them all rich. Senator Chris Murphy described this as mind-blowing, massive, scalable corruption, noting that we are watching the theft of taxpayer money by the decision of the Republican Party to look the other way, as Donald Trump essentially monetizes at scale the White House and the powers given to him. And if we don't tell this story and mount a national bipartisan apolitical resistance to this thievery and corruption, and it becomes normalized as just a part of doing business in America, then our democracy will not survive this level of corruption, grift, and graft. Our democracy will not survive. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of a sitting United States senator, and he's right, because you cannot have democratic self-governance when the president is on the take, when foreign governments and criminal enterprises can buy policy outcomes by investing in presidential family businesses, when regulatory agencies exist to protect the regulated rather than the public, when lying to the SEC carries no penalty as long as you're partnered with the right people. What you witnessed in that clip was just one small thread in a vast tapestry of corruption. But if you pull that thread, the whole thing unravels, because Alt-5 Sigma's lies about their accountant are connected to their deal with World Liberty Financial, which is connected to Trump's crypto empire, which is connected to foreign governments buying access, which is connected to SEC enforcement actions being dropped, which is connected to the dismantling of oversight mechanisms, which is connected to the systematic subordination of public interest to private profit. And at the center of it all is a man who has spent his entire life gaming systems, stiffing contractors, declaring bankruptcy to avoid paying debts, and now he's brought that ethos to the federal government, and he's doing it at a scale that would have been unimaginable in any previous era. So here's what you do with this information. You refuse to accept it as normal. You refuse to let the scandal wash over you and fade from memory. You call your representatives. You support journalists who are doing this kind of investigative work. You vote in every single election for people who will provide genuine oversight, and you tell everyone you know that what we're witnessing is not politics as usual. This is not partisan bickering. This is a fundamental assault on the integrity of our institutions, and if we don't fight back against it with everything we have, then we deserve what we get when the whole corrupt edifice comes crashing down. The Trump crypto empire built on lies, fueled by foreign money, protected by captured regulators, enriching a family that views public service as a profit opportunity, and Alt-5 Sigma is just the latest company to get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. But unlike previous scandals, there will be no accountability, no consequences, no justice, unless we demand it, unless we refuse to normalize this corruption, unless we treat every revelation like the Forbes reporter's discovery as the constitutional crisis that it actually is. Because that's what you just watched. That was a live demonstration of how corruption works in Trump world. That was the curtain being pulled back on a system that's rotten to its core. And the only question that remains is whether we're going to do anything about it, or whether we're going to shrug and move on to the next outrage in an endless cascade of scandal that eventually desensitizes us to the complete erosion of democratic norms and rule of law.